All right, so losing rounds in training. Now, if you're a hobbyist, you have to understand. Most people get into this sport when they're a little bit older. Most people now, especially because when they're hobbyists, most people 30, 40, 50 plus years old. Jiu-jitsu wasn't around really when they were younger. So a lot of the hobbyists now are in their 30s or 40s or 50s, 60s, etc. You have to understand that there are going to be young competitors that are going to train more than you, that maybe you start out better than them, and then they progress to be better than you. You have to understand that this isn't your main focus in life. Okay, so obviously, you come in and maybe you're a purple belt or you're a blue belt, and you come in as a new white belt who you beat up, and then all of a sudden they're able to train more than you. They have less responsibilities, and all of a sudden, as the years go on, they're progressing faster than you are. Okay, you're getting better like this, and they're training more, so they're getting better. So eventually, this kind of starts to happen, and they get better than you. You have to understand that's okay. It's not your main focus to be the best in the world, to be beating everybody in the gym, to be beating everybody in competition. You do this as a hobby, right? So you have to understand that while this isn't your main focus, you can't be so ego-driven that it makes you so upset to where it really affects you, or you just end up quitting training altogether. Right? You have to be aware that any competitor or anyone who takes the sport seriously, not even a competitor, but anyone who takes the sport seriously and trains 5, 6, 7 times a week versus your 3 times a week, even if they start at a later date than you, they're eventually most likely going to surpass the level that you're at. So if you lose in training, obviously, don't think nothing of it. You should be trying to get better and to win, but you have to understand that you have other things that you're focusing on. You have a job you have to go to tomorrow. You don't have to be getting your leg broken in heel hooks, fighting tooth and nail out to get out of an arm bar and get your arm popped. So you want to be trying to get better, but not at the cost of getting injured and not being able to train for X amount of time. So you want to be focusing on improving, getting better, but everything that happens to you, take it with a grain of salt. Okay, you have to understand that competitors coming up will always be in a position to surpass your skill level eventually if they are training more than you, or hobbyists that are training more than you. Right? So if you start to lose to someone that you were beating up in the past, take a deep breath. Understand that this is what's supposed to be happening, and just be the guy that is there as much as you can be to help the other people in the room start to get better. All right, so now let's talk about losing in training if you're a competitor. Understand, the second that you don't care whether or not the person next to you is better than you or not, your athletic career is over. Okay? As an athlete, you have to be constantly, a serious athlete, you have to be constantly looking to be the best guy in the room and in the world. If someone passes you or submits you or beats you up and around and you're really trying to win that match, that particular match, you should be pissed about it. Okay? You should be pissed to the point where you lose sleep over it at night, where you are thinking about it hours after the session, about what you could have done better, to do better in whatever situation that you were in. Of course, there are sessions where you go in and you let a guy lock a submission and you try to escape, and if you get submitted, you get submitted. But if you're training hard and you're trying to win a round against someone and they legitimately beat you up, if you're a competitor, that should make you angry. Okay, it is your job to always be striving to be the best guy in the room, to be the best guy in every single situation that you could find yourself in. You want to be the guy with the best guillotines. You want to be the guy with the best passing, the best arm bars, the best sweeps, the best takedowns. You want to be the guy striving to be the guy who's the best at everything across the board. Obviously, that's never going to happen. Okay, I'm never going to be the best wrestler, best judo player in the world. Okay, but I can strive to be. I can strive to be the best wrestler under scrimmage wrestling rules, under an ADCC rule set. I can strive to achieve that. I'm never going to be the best freestyle wrestler, the best collegiate wrestler, the best judo player under those rules, but I can strive to be. I can strive to be as good as those guys or be competitive with those guys. Okay? If you go in and you get beat up and you're to a point where you don't care about it, don't even bother being an athlete. Okay? You may as well just come in and train 3 times a week, right, and do something else with your life. Athletes have to be aware and have to take it seriously when they're losing in training or in competition. Okay, you can't take it lightly. If someone comes in and you're like, okay, we're both going to try to win this match, it's a competition, and someone beats you, that should piss you off. Or like it's like a lot of times they do like at the end of class, you guys gather around and make 2 competitors fight in front of the whole class to simulate a competition experience. We don't do this at Henzo's, but a lot of schools do. If you lose that match, that should piss you. Like that should ruin your day. Like there's so many times I go home from training, and just the other week, I did an EBI overtime round with Craig, and we did the first round, and he actually escaped the first round, and it was long. It was like I held him for like 2 or 3 minutes, and he escaped the first round, and then he was on my back, and he didn't submit me. He held me in that position. He took my back, and he kept me there, and I couldn't escape for like 2.5, 3 minutes, and John called the round. And I was so furious about that they didn't submit me or anything. I just couldn't get out. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I couldn't escape his back control. Like, what's wrong with me? And then Craig left for something. Like he went to go film or compete or something. So like for 4 days, I couldn't train with him again. And I was just losing my mind. I'm like, I can't believe that he held me in back position for 3 minutes, and then I couldn't get out, and I couldn't train with him the next day. So the first thing that I do when he gets back is like, John calls EBI rounds, like, let's do an overtime round. And then I went back and I won this exchange, and then I was like, okay, now I can go to sleep at night. But for days at a time, I'm like, I can't believe he held me there. I can't believe he held me there. Like that's the kind of stuff that should make you that should drive you crazy. Is when you're trying to win a match against someone who's relatively your level, and they're beating you. Like when I go in and someone beats the piss out of me, it's not very often, but there are days, of course, where I go in, and especially wrestling guys, I just feel like I can't get any takedowns off, whatever the case is. That stuff eats me so much where I'm like, I have to do more. Okay, as a competitor, you always want more. You always need to have more. And it's very, very important to have ingrained into your being, to always be striving to be the best of the room, the best in the world, and to always want more for yourself as a person and as a competitor. So this one is both the same for hobbyists and competitors. Okay, this is just for all around getting better at the sport. A lot of people are quick to jump on the opportunity to work on something that they're good at. Okay, to be in top position or top mount or on the guy's back. Everybody wants to work that. Nobody wants to work on situations that they're bad at. Just to overall and in general get better at the sport. It is so, so crucial to constantly put yourselves in situations, where you aren't the best. Okay. So for example, if you're a big guy, if you're a heavyweight, if you're not flexible, and you can pass anybody's guard in the gym, but anybody in the gym can pass your guard, it should make you upset that that's how that is. Any deficit, any situation where any hole in your game that you have should always be something that you should work on. If I feel like there's something in my game which I'm not the best at right now, I feel relatively good everywhere on the ground. So the big thing for me is working on my shots. Standing up, entering into my partner's legs and taking them down. And that's what you should be working on. If someone, doesn't really happen that frequently anymore, but if someone passes my guard, for example, and holds me down and mounts, or the example I just gave with Craig, and someone holds my back, I will constantly put myself in that position until I feel that I can escape without an issue. All right, if someone comes in and they hold me down and mount for a whole round, I remember before 2017 ADCC, I did a mounted round with one of John's old school black belts, Doug, and Doug is no joke. He started top mount, and I had very good escapes before that, and I don't know what it was. I just couldn't get out of Doug's mount for like 3 minutes. It took me like 3.5, 4 minutes to get out of Doug's mount. And I was so angry that every single session I did mounted round with Doug and just let other big, strong, good guys pass me and mount me, to the point where a week later, Doug was trying to hold me in mount and I was just escaping, every single time. And then to a point where you want to go a step further and say, okay, well, how can I escape when I let the guys put an arm over my head? How can I escape when I let a guy put 2 arms over my head? And then try to start working from there. Okay, so you always take it a step further, and you always want to look to, you have to have, this is where the overconfidence, comes in. You have to have a realistic view of your game from a third person. Okay, you should be able to look in at yourself. Okay, I should be able to look at myself from a third party and say, if there was something that I had to pick out that you need to work on, this is what it is. Okay, so every couple of weeks, every couple of months, I assess myself and I say, there's something that I haven't worked on in a while. What is that? What do I need to get better at? Okay, I haven't worked on escapes in a while. I've been working on, for example, I've been working on guard passing recently again. So I haven't been working on escapes. I'm working on sweeping guys, putting them bottom and passing their guard. So, someone, Ethan or Craig or someone or Gary locks in a submission, they get me in a back triangle and I get submitted, and I'm like, damn, like I haven't worked escapes in a while, so I have to escape. So then I spend the whole week, I was working on guard passing or something, and I spend the whole week fighting out of back triangles, fighting out of triangles, fighting out of arm bars, until I am confident again that I can escape with ease, not with ease, but I can escape, without getting submitted more times than not. So you're always looking to put yourself in situations where you feel you're not the best at. And you have to be able to accurately look at yourself from a third party in at yourself and make a realistic assessment of what your skills are and what needs to be worked on. And only then will it become easy. Because then you can just look at yourself and say, okay, right now I'm not the best at this, this, and that, so let's work on that for the next 3 days, a week, a month, however long it takes for you to become competent or become good at those certain movements. If it's something simple, like I want to fix my half guard passing, or if something big like I can't play guard at all, my bottom guard is terrible, how can we work on that? How can we improve our leg locks? Things of that nature. So you have to be able to accurately look at yourself as an athlete or as a person, and say, I need to legitimately work on these things, and then move forward from there. All right, let's talk about training with lower belts. Pretty similar again for both hobbyists and competitors. You have to understand first that these are your training partners and the people that are going to in the long run help you. Okay, you can't train by yourself, and you should always be looking out for lower belts, whether you're a competitor or whether you're just a hobbyist. Right? You should always be helping them, trying to get them to a level that will help you get better. Okay, obviously, if you're a black belt or if you're a brown belt, purple belt, and you're training against a white belt, it's going to be an easy roll. All right, so your goal, just for the strength of the room as a whole, should be to get them to a level where they can start to give you, some real reactions and get to a level where they can help you get better. Okay. Now, as far as training with lower belts, the best way to benefit immediately from training with lower belts is to handicap yourself. Okay, whether you're a hobbyist, whether you're a competitor, just getting better overall as a jiu-jitsu athlete, handicap yourself. Put yourself in those bad spots. Okay, just as we spoke about before, if you just go in and you're a blue belt and you put yourself in bad spots against black belts, you're just going to get submitted every single time. The black belt's going to put you in bad spots themselves. You don't have to go out of your way to put yourself in a triangle because you're probably going to find yourself there somewhere in a role, and you can try to work out from there. But if you go with lower belts and you put yourself in a bad spot, it's going to be challenging to still fight out of those spots because you're in such a bad spot that if you're in a fully locked armbar or fully locked triangle, you're in such a bad spot that it's still going to be difficult to get out. So use those lower belts to handicap yourself and work on your bad spots. Okay. You can also use those lower belts to work on something new that you're working on that won't work on the people your level. All right. A big mistake that people make is they get to a certain level and then that's their game. They don't add anything to their game. All right. So what we want is if we're both blue belts, both purple belts, and we're evenly matched. Okay. When we go, it could go either way. We go back and forth, back and forth. If I learn a new move, for example, and I try it on you, of course it's not going to work because it's a brand new move. Okay, you're so evenly matched that you have a new move and it's not working, and then you say, "Oh, this move doesn't work. I want to give it up," because maybe you try it and the other guy gets an advantage and then he beats you up and he's winning all the rounds now. Or you feel like you're kind of in this mental fuzz where you're doing good against the guy and then you start to do new moves and then he starts to beat you up and now you want to go back to your old ways so you're competitive again. Whereas if you train with the lower belts and you try to do those new moves, you work your way up through the ranks to be able to use the move on someone your own level or better than you. Okay, so maybe I learned a new single leg takedown. Of course, I'm not going to use it on an Olympic level wrestler, but maybe I can't use it on my buddy who's a purple belt, but I'll be able to use it on a white belt. So you start with people who are much lower ranked than you, and you use them to handicap yourself, both positionally and submissions. Okay, you work on your bad positional spots. Maybe it's bottom guard, maybe it's bottom mount, maybe it's bottom side control, escaping submissions. To practice new moves, okay, where you can use a new move that you learned, and you can have the confidence to try it on someone who's not as good as you, and then as it starts to work on them, you start to refine it, and then maybe you hit it on a white belt on Monday, and maybe next Monday you hit it on a blue belt. And then maybe next Monday you try it on a purple belt and it fails. So you keep doing it on the same blue belt. And then it gets better and better and better. And then next Monday after that, go back to the purple belt. And you start working your way up through the moves. Okay, so you can handicap yourself in multiple ways, both positionally, both with submissions. And you can handicap yourself by saying, I'm only going to go for a certain move today. I'm only going to attack your right arm. I'm only going to attack your left leg. I'm only going to leg lock you. I'm only going to strangle you today. Okay, you can handicap yourself like that. We're only working on certain things. For me right now, I'm handicapping myself with lower belts by only going for arm bars from top mounts. I'll only go for arm bars from top mounts, or I'll let them pass and I'll work out of back triangles. I'll let them fully lock rear nakeds and strangles. And I'll try to fight out from there. And if you get submitted, you get submitted. Who cares? It's training. You get submitted in training, so you don't get submitted in competition. All right, I get submitted more than almost anybody in training, but I never get submitted in competition. Except for Felipe Pena. Okay, that's a great way is handicapping yourself, both with positions and submissions and attacking certain things, and using lower belts to work on new moves that you're trying that won't necessarily work on people at your own level right now. Let's talk a little bit about now developing game plans for competitions. Okay, and this has two faces to it. One is the face of developing a game plan for the rules of the competition, and the second is developing a game plan for the athletes in that competition, okay, or the athlete that you're competing against. So first, talk about the rules aspect of whatever competition we're going into. Obviously, different game plans for different rule sets. We'll start off with a sub-only rule set. When you're going into a submission-only rule set, you want to look to spend the most time possible in situations which are going to lead to submissions. Okay, I see people going to EBI or submission-only rule sets and spend 8 out of 10 minutes standing. How are you supposed to get a submission from standing position? You want to force action and spend as much time as you can in situations where you're going to actually submit your opponent. Attacking the legs, attacking the arms, attacking the neck, attacking the back. You want to be able to put yourself in spots where you have the most submission outputs possible. Okay, instead of going for one submission during a match, and you stay standing for 8 minutes, you want to go for 10 submissions in a match. Okay, whether you're on top, you're on bottom, whatever the case is. So submission output, as far as submission only, makes a big difference. The more submissions you try, the more submissions the more likely you are to actually land the submission. Okay, so submission output and time spent in positions where you have submission opportunities. Let's talk about, and that goes for all submission only, no time limit, EBI, like a judge's decision. You're all trying to get as many submissions as possible. In an EBI rule set, for example, you have to obviously try to put most submissions out, most amount of submissions out as you can during the regulation, and then obviously for the overtime, you have to plan accordingly for the overtime. You can't just go in to an EBI not having done a training camp with those specific back attack and defending, armbar attack and defense situations. You have to do a camp based around that. You can't just train, do mostly wrestling, and then just go into an EBI. What you should be doing is mostly ground grappling for EBI because you want to do submissions, so having sharp submission skills going in, and doing a camp that's based around, whether it's a 2-week or 3-week camp based around EBI overtime. So doing every day you do a round of either back attacks or arm bars. It's very, very important. Okay. And a no time limit, for example, you still want to have a high submission output, but it's a no time limit match. So maybe you want to have a different game plan where you play a more of a reactive game, where you don't use so much energy, where you build to a peak as you go. If you have a 10-minute submission-only match, you're going as hard as you can for 10 minutes, okay? Because you want to win. You want to win that match, and then you have usually one match and you're done with submission only. But for a no time limit match, for example, you have one match and you're done, but the match could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Okay, so you want to start at a peak, or you want to start slow and then build to a peak as you go. The worst feeling in the world is being dead tired, completely exhausted, and knowing that the only way the match is going to end is if you get submitted or you give up. There's no worse feeling in the world than that. So you want to start, use your energy wisely, and as your opponent gets more tired, you build to a peak. Okay, what you don't want to do is start out at 100% and then fade as time goes on, because then that's when you start drowning. Okay, so that's the submission only phase, where you have EBI. Obviously, you want to have high submission output, and you want to have a good camp surrounding that specific overtime. With submission only, with a time limit, okay, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, you go relatively hard. If it's 10 minutes, you go hard the whole time. If it's 20 or 30 minutes, you go relatively hard the whole time because you want to win. If it's no time limit, you build to a peak. As far as IBJJF goes, you have to start getting an idea for the boundaries. Okay, so whenever you attempt to move, you have to circle yourself and aim yourself so that you're moving towards the center of the mat. Because obviously, everything that everyone tries to do, especially with me, when I'm competing IBJJF, is the second I hit a good move, they just try to run out of bounds and get reset in the middle of the mat. Okay, a perfect example of this is Patrick Gaudio, me versus Patrick Gaudio, 2018 Nogi Worlds. I hit a single leg. I went to a rear body lock. He was up one advantage, and he tried to just run out of bounds. So if you actually go back and watch that match, I turn him back to the center and started walking him back to the center, and then hit him with a Diashi Harai, and we go down to the floor. And I end up scoring 2 advantages, one for the almost takedown and one for the almost back take. But just redirectioning people back towards the center is a big thing with IBJJF because it's very small mats and they reset you for anything. Okay, and there's no boundaries per se. They just reset you based on the ref's discretion. So game planning for the boundaries, being able to circle back inside is a big big part of it. And also exploiting in any rule set, exploiting the weakness of the rules. So for IBJJF, if you notice all of my Nogi Pans and Nogi world matches, I exploited the weakness of both the rules and the athletes. Cross Hashigurami is not a position that's normally used at all in IBJJF, so therefore most IBJJ athletes don't know how to defend it properly. So my whole game plan based around that tournament was play the boundaries well, so make sure if I go for a shot or submission, we're in the middle of the mat and they can't move away to restart the position. And to make sure that I had a bottom game based around entering into cross hashigurami because it was a legal move, but athletes had no idea how to deal with it. If you look at Gaudio, you look at Yuri, they're just lost when we're in that position. So I entered into cross hashigurami, and I used a position that wasn't familiar to the athletes under that rule set. Okay, so you have to talk about the rule sets and then the athletes. Okay, that moves a little bit into the athletes now. So we covered submission only, we covered IBJJF, and now let's cover ADCC. With ADCC, again, you have to have a different game plan. We'll be going to ADCC type tournaments. There are no boundaries, okay, so you don't have to worry about that. If you start a transition inside the mat and you end up in the concrete outside, out the front door, it doesn't matter. You don't stop until the transition's over. So that is very different from an IBJJF rule set. So you have to get mentally prepared for that when you go in and you start to do these moves. Because a lot of times when people go out of bounds, they stop because they go off the mat and they say, okay, we're off the mat, we stop. But ADCC, that isn't the case. You have to get mentally prepared to keep going until the referee says stop. Okay? Otherwise, you're just going to get scored on, you're going to get submitted. So there's no boundaries. That's one major rule in ADCC. All right, number two is you have to be prepared for it to be more, the scrambles more to be like an MMA fight than they are a jiu-jitsu match. Okay, because if you look at jiu-jitsu, what everyone tries to do is they take their opponent down, and then once their opponent's down, especially submission only, one person plays top, one person plays bottom. In ADCC, that's not the case because nobody wants to get scored on. So in ADCC, instead of the guy getting taken down and the bottom man staying down, everyone tries to get back up. So in ADCC, you have to mentally get in that mindset of guys trying to scramble away from you and not accept the takedown when you put them down. So when you hit a double leg, you put a guy down, that's not over there. You have to game plan around, okay, what am I going to do after the takedown, and how am I going to deal with his scrambles, when he tries to get up and away from me. And if he just sits on his butt, then you score. All right, but there's different game plans for different rule sets. Okay, so we covered submission only, IBJJF rule sets, and ADCC rule sets. Okay, so that's game planning for the rule set portion. Okay, now let's look at the athlete portion. All right, whenever I look at athletes as individuals, okay, for in ADCC, for example, what I'll do is I'll study all, or I'll look at and think about and study all the athletes on my side of the bracket, and then the two top athletes on the opposite side that I suspect will make it to the finals. Okay. For super fights, it's much easier because you just have one athlete to study, and you're good to go. What I look to do is I look to take athletes and look at what they are good at. Then I look at what they're not good at. So the game plan, my goal is to force athletes into positions that I know that they aren't good at and take them out of positions that I know that they are great at. Okay? So for example, if I know a guy has good guillotine, I'm not going to put my head in positions where he can go and start guillotining me. Instead of doing a shot on a single leg or a double leg, maybe I'm going to fight his head and snap him down. Maybe I'm going to go for less dangerous foot sweeps, where now he has no access to my head. Okay, so I always take the best tools that an athlete has away from them by putting them into positions that they aren't good at. Okay, and you have to, as an athlete, be able to determine, one, how can I exploit the rules of the tournament, and two, how can I exploit the weaknesses of the athlete that I'm competing against. Okay, I need to take away all the things they're good at, and I need to force them into spots which they aren't good at. Okay, and if you look at most of, for example, a perfect example is my match with Cyborg and Muhammad Ali in ADCC. Both are not very well versed in leg locks. The first thing I did, put them in cross ashigarami. Okay, I didn't do leg locks all up until that point. That entire day, I fought Dylan, I fought Hamilo, I fought Keenan, I fought Shanji, and I didn't leg lock anybody. But the second I went into those divisions, I knew that especially Muhammad Ali and Cyborg weren't very well versed in leg locks, so I made it a point to put them into those situations. And it goes to what we talked about the other day, doing those specific situational drills. Okay, where I know, even though they've been trained much longer than me, I knew much more from those certain situations than they did. Okay, so you have to be able to exploit the weakness, or have to be able to exploit the rule set for what it is, and determine what the strength and weaknesses are of whatever given athletes that you are competing against or may be competing against, and learn how to work around those. All right, so as far as off the mat training, just staying in shape, as far as just a person and as an athlete, someone who just wants to be in shape to train jiu-jitsu, what I would recommend is a combination of weightlifting and gymnastics. Okay, and here's my reasoning behind it. Gymnasts do a lot of bodyweight exercises that are very relatable to jiu-jitsu. Right? Gymnastics are truly strong. Gymnasts are truly strong and can do things that most people can't with their own body weight. And gymnastics are a great way to learn how to control your own body as well as build strength. Okay, so a lot of the gymnastics workouts and routines are very closely related to the movements that we do in jiu-jitsu. They give you a good amount of strength. You have to be strong to do a lot of them, and a lot of them require flexibility that is very similar to the flexibility that you need in jiu-jitsu, the athleticism that you need in jiu-jitsu, and a combination of weightlifting to be strong, and flexing, obviously, or not flexing, stretching, so you can at least sit in a butterfly stretch. You can have loose hips to be able to pommel your legs over, things like that. For me, I do a combination of all three. I do gymnastics workouts, I do stretching, and I do weightlifting with very high reps. Okay. Now, the reason why I do high reps and the reason why I don't run, okay, is because everyone thinks that running will increase your cardio. If you actually do research, it's proven that you can't really increase naturally, speaking like without performance enhancers and EPOs and things like that. You can only naturally increase your VO2 max by a very small margin. Okay, so running isn't going to increase your cardio on the mat. Right? If you take a marathon runner and you have him do 30 seconds worth of jiu-jitsu, he's going to be exhausted. Weightlifting with very high reps will get you tired, will get you exhausted. It won't increase your VO2 max. Running will increase your VO2 max much. But what weightlifting will do is it will get you in the mental mindset with very high reps things. Let's say you do, 20 sets of or four sets of squats and 4 sets of leg presses. You do 20 reps each back to back. This will just get you in the mental mindset of having to redline, okay, where you just feel like you're going to die trying to do this. You're exhausted, you're breathing heavy, and you just feel mentally like you want to quit. You find yourself there a lot in jiu-jitsu. So for me, personally, I like heavy rep weightlifting where I have very short intervals between sets. where I'm doing very high reps to fatigue my muscles, get tired, and just feel like I mentally want to quit. This is everything you're going to experience in jiu-jitsu. Your muscles are going to be tired, you're going to be exhausted and breathing heavy, and you're going to want to quit at some point. Okay, so it's very similar in that sense, where you just mentally get used to being in those situations. All right. Ultimately, what gets you better, what gives you increased cardio and stamina and those things is not working out. Okay, it's not, you're not going to be able to run 10 miles and have better cardio in the mass. What gives you better cardio is being efficient. And the more efficient that you are, the bigger illusion of cardio you're going to have. Okay, it comes down to efficiency. If I try to go in to a boxing ring with Mayweather and box him for 2 rounds, I'm going to be completely exhausted. Okay, because I'm inefficient. Not because his cardio is better than mine. If Mayweather comes in and he does 2 minutes of jiu-jitsu with me, he's going to be exhausted. Not because my cardio is better than his, but because he's just so inefficient. Okay, so it's very important to be strong and to be flexible for jiu-jitsu, but what's going to give you the most success is going to be efficiency. You're not going to increase your cardio by running a lot or by doing sprints. Okay, you're going to increase your cardio by being more efficient. The increase that you're going to get on the mat from doing cardio or doing things like that is going to be negligible. Whereas you can get real tangible increases in performance and in cardio by just simply being more efficient and being better at jiu-jitsu.